Hey everyone, I am Alex Somore, and this is the Who Knew Sports podcast. As you guys know, I recently just started, and I've been trying to get a bunch of different perspectives of how to or where I belong in the sports industry. So one way I've been doing this is with this podcast, and I've also thought about just improving this podcast little by little. So what better way to do that than bringing an expert? So today I brought in Matt Noonan, who is the editor and founder of Noontime Sports and content marketer and strategist. He's located in the Boston area. He does the New England sports more on the high school, kind of not well known colleges. He try to give them a platform for the athletes who aren't really talked about a lot. So thank you guys, and I think you guys will really appreciate this. It was really fun talking to Matt, and enjoy. So Matt, I know we just said it, but how are you today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's rainy, it's overcast. I got a good hill workout in this morning, so fired up. Was saying we got a good one today. So all set, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. I remember you said you were under the weather recently, or is that kind of past, or still kind of feeling it?
I think feel good after that run, so feeling good.
Right. Okay, perfect. So I do, as you know, as we talked about, I just kind of started my, podcast and YouTube channel. I kind of just wanted to ask, starting off, like, if, what tips you have to kind of get first to get your name out there.
Oh man, that's a load. How much time do you have? You got like a couple days, as I'm gonna say. Is what do you have?
I got time.
Okay, got time. Good. Okay. So here's, I was thinking about this, I've thought about this a lot just because of talking to folks like yourself that are, getting into the business, getting into content creation, and want to be able to do something, something exciting, because, right now I think the pandemic fueled this creative wave of podcasters, TikTok creators, YouTube folks like yourself, people that want to, blog and do videos and so forth, create stuff for Instagram. And so I've kind of learned over the years, it sounds a cliche here, Alex, but I like to do this thing called the rule of three, or maybe even the rule of one or rule of two or five. But what I think is, if you want to be doing content creation and starting to kind of grow a brand, first off, you want to think about, what exactly am I creating on a daily or a weekly or monthly basis? You want to kind of have a plan, number one. And once you develop that plan, like, we'll use an example, because it is football season. We'll say that, hey, we want to do something about, whether it's high school or college or the NFL. How do we want to do that? So we say we want to talk about, our five, our favorite players, or, maybe you want to do something, plays that you really enjoy. Well, create content thinking as if, like, I'm going to create something right now for three people. Maybe it's your mother, maybe it's your father, maybe it's uncle or aunt, a best friend, a roommate perhaps, and think about curating content specifically just for them. And so you make it for them, and then eventually it kind of, like, the idea of snowballing is what it is. Hey, these people are going to say, hey, Alex is creating this, or, you're doing that, and you want to be able to kind of, have it morph off into that different angle. But there really is no, that's kind of, one way to look at it. I think the best thing that I would say to anyone when it comes to creating content, in all seriousness, is just get started. It's cliche, it's sappy, it sounds like, oh man, like, that sounds easier said than done. But it's just like anything, it's repetition. If you want to ride a bike, you gotta keep doing that. You want to learn how to do deadlifts, or you want to maybe learn how to cook, muffins, or cupcakes in a certain way. Got to keep doing it. It's like, it's mental exercises that you keep doing, and little by little, you get so good at your craft that eventually people start kind of glomming onto it as well. So, that's kind of the way that I would look at it, Alex, is just kind of dive in, but also think about, let's think about maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people in my life that I want to create some additional content for. And, let's kind of curate for them. And then when you're creating that content, you're also want to say to them, I want feedback. What do you like? What do you dislike? And so forth. So there's so many ways that I would do that, but that's kind of one of the ways I would start here for you.
So I guess my audience right now is kind of like students in my position, kind of like just trying to learn, all the different roles in sports. Did you look at the YouTube channel and kind of like see who I
did. I did. I liked it. We got a little bit of, I mean, I'm here in Boston. It looks like we got some Midwest flair stuff going on, but I liked what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So my goal right now, I'm just trying to like, it's more of like, there's a cat on that. Okay. So I'm trying to interview different professionals in the sport industry and try to, get that information out to, people in my kind of position in life, I guess, and try to, have people learn about different positions like I'm trying to do. I'm trying to like, supply that to people as well. And
Sure.
So you also talked about having like a specific, like having a specific thing in mind, like how like doing something different monthly. I actually just talked to my professor about it, Dr. Baleska, and I came up with this idea is like, well, she started off presenting this idea of like every week you do like someone from a different state. So I kind of came back with the idea is every month I do I focus on a state, and I do like, I start off in Missouri here, and I would do like the professional teams, one person from a professional team here from like the Blues, Cardinals. Then you have people in Kansas City, the Chiefs, the Royals, and then Sporting KC, and I also have STLC SC here now. So yeah, that's kind of like a plan that I have right now.
Cool.
Yeah. So when it comes to like kind of like the smaller details about your channel, what are like what little things that you do that seem to make a big difference
when it comes to creating content? I presume
yes.
What you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it's interesting to me, Alex, because I think, like I said a few seconds ago, I think the biggest thing for anyone to do content creation is really, again, getting started and just really trying to not be afraid to try different things. So maybe one day you set out and say, I'm going to create a post, or I'm going to do an Instagram, like, live, or I'm going to do maybe something on TikTok that says, here's my three keys to, the Raiders playing the Eagles, or, the Patriots playing the Cowboys. And, here's what my three keys are as well. And maybe that's what you do or something too. But then maybe the next day or a couple of days later, you go back and you watch that video and you say to yourself, I don't want to do three keys. I just want to do one key. I got 15 seconds or I got 60 seconds. So that's, maybe I want to just do a 15-second, rant about, hey, like, this is what the Cowboys need to do against the Patriots, or this is what the Eagles need to do against the Raiders, as an example, speaking from football. But I think what the biggest thing is, I would say, from a small, little small nook and cranny, is really, kind of think about what is your goal and objective. So if you want to create, say, football content about, the Patriots, because I'll use them as an example, being up here in Boston. I think the biggest thing I would do is you want to first off look at, what's your competition. So for starters, you've got television, you've got radio, you've got newspapers, you have web, you have folks that are doing podcasts like yourself, or doing YouTube shows, or doing Instagrams, or doing TikTok videos, and looking around and saying, okay, what are they doing? But then I would say, well, what are they doing, number one? But then number two, what are they not doing? And so trying to figure out maybe a little bit of a different angle and putting your own twist on. The funny thing about being under the creative umbrella that we both know is it's kind of a copycat world a little bit. So, five people might do the same thing, but the sixth person might do it, but then put their own twist on it. So I think trying to find your own twist is really important. I think, if you want to kind of scale back and say, well, if I'm not, not writing about the pros, or if I'm not doing content about the pros, or maybe the go to the college world, the high school world too, trying to build, I was talking about this earlier today with someone. It's about, I think one of the most important things too, especially in content, is building relationships. It's not just with your audience, but it's with the people that you cover. A good example is, so, here I am, I've been doing, Noontime Sports, my own, kind of brand and small little media website here up in the New England area that covers a lot of small colleges and high schools and some amateur sports as well. And I think that one of the things that I've learned, because, when I was working at a couple startups, was building those relationships. Because when you're kind of new to this, you're going to, try to feel out, hey, who's going to be, accepting and who's going to be understanding, to what I want to do. And it takes a lot of courage and guts. And that as well, as you just alluded to, with trying to say, hey, well, if I want to do this once a month in a state that I'm living in, or, if I want to do this every other week with, maybe someone in, this line of work or someone in that line of work, it can be tough, and it can be easy to feel rejected because maybe, you fire off 10 emails and you only hear back from one of them. But that one person could be really the beginning of something exciting, because, that one person does it, kind of going back to the rule of three or the rule of two, which is, hey, you get one person to believe in you, then it starts, hey, they're going to share it. And then they're going to want to be able to say, I was on Alex's show, or I talked to Alex about the story that he was doing for TikTok or Instagram, perhaps. I think that's so essential. I've learned over the last few years of really kind of honing in and focusing a lot on brand building, is that you can create the best content in the world, which is fine, and great can be defined however you want it to be. But I think one of the most important things, Alex, that I would say to anyone when you're getting started in content creation, or if you've been in it for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, it's about relationships, because the relationships are also going to open the door to stories that may not be, covered or may not be mentioned. And I think, and like on a daily outlet, or, a weekly outlet, or an email blast too. So I think that that's one of the most important things as well, is that when you do go about building, starting out and getting started in content creation, think about those relationships, the people you're covering, the people that, you're reaching, and engage with your audience too. One of the biggest things that I always like to do at the end of my podcast is I encourage folks, especially if they're listening on Apple Podcast, to rate and review, because I want to see what people think, but I also want to hear if someone says, hey, I really liked, how you had so-and-so on, or I really liked that solo show that you did to kind of recap the week of New England small college football. So that, I know it's a long-winded answer, but I think that's kind of, some of the small things you got to think about.
Right. And honestly, the reason this kind of all started with, like, as an assignment, I was supposed to do 3 for each 3 of my sport management classes. But the thing is, I learned very fast that this is really fun. And, since I was already recording it, I was like, hey, let's just put this on YouTube and Anchor and see where this goes, And, and you kind of go back with the networking thing. And I was thinking, the first person, 2 people that come to mind is Victor Anderson and Drew Lott's with the Blues. Victor Anderson's with the Iowa Wild. And I've honestly had great more than just, connections with during the podcast. I've talked to them outside, and, I've been trying to set up, different things with them as well. And it's been a great experience so far.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
So I guess, getting your podcast out there and getting, like, your different videos out there, you talk about kind of curating to, small audiences at the start. But, like, once you kind of get past that point, where do you see, like, most fan engagement on what specific social media platform? Is that like YouTube, or do you see it kind of on like Twitter, or how's that?
I actually think the biggest engagement right now is on Instagram and TikTok, because that's, we're living in a, Facebook, I feel like, was interesting because, here I am, I guess if you call me a dinosaur age, graduating in 2010 from college from Wheaton Lions in Massachusetts. But the thing that I would say to, is that there, you can study all you want. I mean, you need to figure out kind of exactly where your audience is going to live. I mean, every channel, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, there's other ones, of course, out there, podcast world as well. There's going to be, even if you're blogging through WordPress or another outlet, every channel is going to have a unique audience. So I think one of the most important things to think about is if you say, like when people want to get started, I sometimes say, like, think about one channel to focus on. It's hard to sometimes, like for me, like, I started, the first real thing was Twitter because I got on in 2009 and, from the brand perspective in Noontime Sports, but, then there was a Facebook page that came after that. And then eventually, came came YouTube, and then came, Instagram, down the road. And now, with utilizing TikTok, but, Instagram and TikTok have a lot of unique, things, tools that you can use, because you not only, are able to post a photo or a graphic, but, you can collaborate with another, content creator or a friend. You can be able to do these Instagram lives. You can be able to do videos. You can do reels with music and so forth. And I know there's some parallels that you're also seeing with, kind of a reels kind of pop up on Facebook. But I think when it comes to, like, an audience like I have for small college sports or high schools, well, you got to think about the age demographic. If you're covering student athletes that are between the ages of, say, 14 and 18 for high school, and then like 18 to 22 or 23 for college, where are they living right now on their, they're all on their phones is what they all are. My phone's charging right now. I was trying to, bring it over here too, but that's where they all are. And I think if you go to, when you go out, these days, whether you're at a Starbucks or at a restaurant, or, maybe even you're waiting in line to pay for your groceries, everyone's on their phone. These are little computers that we're carrying around with us because people want to check, what's the news on Twitter. I mean, Twitter to me is is definitely very news heavy. If you're at an event and maybe you want to post some photos or videos, that's probably a great way to do that. But Instagram's, they say, about photos worth 1,000 words and so forth as well. But, so I think I would say, kind of identify where you want to be. But, a lot of the audiences, they want to be where also the brands or the players or the actors and the musicians are as well. And so that also would entail doing a little bit of market research. So, you might create content and say whether it's about, moto racing or, could be about sailing or whatnot. I think the most important thing is before, when you start to decide, okay, I want to create content on X, Y, or Z subject matters, do some market research and try to identify where the audience is, because you might say, hey, it's all on Instagram, which is fine. But then you get on Instagram and you realize that audience might be, maybe in a Reddit format, or might be, found on Facebook. So I think that this day and age, if you look at the sidelines for professional sports, college sports, even high schools too, you're seeing it as well. So a lot of video content creators that are at games and they're just there to shoot a lot of video. And then they're going to, go back, they'll do posts, and then they're going to share it, whether it's a full reel, whether it's like a highlight, whether it's like a big play. And they're going to do it, and they're going to tag the student athletes, and the student athletes are going to share like a wildfire. So I think that you just got to understand, like, kind of, what your approach is and what you want to do, and then say, okay, that's what it is. I personally spend a lot of time investing in, TikTok and also on Instagram, because that's where a lot of the young student athletes are that I'm covering. And so if that's where they are, well, you have got to deliver as a content creator the content to them. And not only you have to deliver it, you got to think about a strategic way about how you're going to deliver it. Is it going to be a graphic every week? Is it going to be a video? Is it going to be, one thing that I've loved doing more recently is just doing like, hey, throw out a question right there and say, let's talk football, guys. What do you got questions on, and so forth. And so, like, for an example, about a week ago, going into the 10th week of the college football season at all levels, hey, give me some questions. We had 50 questions in a span of about an hour. And so you space those out. Obviously more came through, but you can space those out. And that's content that you're creating right there, because you're not only starting a conversation, but you're also engaging with your audience too, because the audience says, okay, I see the question. Well, let me ask. And then they're going, and then, and then the nice thing about Instagram is, hey, you ask a question. So you put out a poll here, Alex, and say, do you like vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream? And everyone, you get that, they're going to get notified on Instagram. Hey, Alex answered the question, and you could share that. And then you're going to say, well, wait a minute, Alex, where's this question coming from? So you really have to kind of identify who your audience is, where are they, kind of, do a little bit of market research. And Instagram might work for some, TikTok might be for the others. Facebook could be where it's at for some things, but it's really all about identifying where your customers and where your followers and your readers and fans are. And if they're all on one platform, well, you need to be on that platform.
Okay. Perfect. So like you talked about like creating, well, first do you create your own like graphics and reels for Instagram and TikTok?
I do. Yeah, I do.
That's awesome. So I'm very new to the Adobe Cloud, and I am attempting to learn all that stuff right now. So what are some tips that you can give me about that, and give everyone really?
So the thing with Adobe, so here's what I would say. I had this when I was an intern with WEI.com, one of the websites here in WEI's under Odyssey, and they carry the Red Sox. They're obviously a sports radio station, but they launched, kind of rebranded their website and redid everything late, around 2008, 2009, 2010. But I had an editor that came over from a newspaper, and he's still there right now. And one of the things that he talked about is it's so important, especially in this day and age. And this is, again, mind you, 2010, 2011, to really know at that time, hey, how to produce something for film, how to do, produce for radio, how to be on air, how do you write for radio? How do you write for television? How do you write for the web? How do you write for the non-web, and so forth? And now let's fast forward about 11 years later. I think when it comes to Adobe, I think the most important thing is, you can dive into the various ones, whether it's, Premiere, whether it's, Illustrator, whether it's, motion with the one for motion graphics, whether it's, there's a whole bunch of them. Photoshop is the biggest one, obviously, I think is the most important one. You see a lot on job descriptions because people want to see that you can do a combination of, Photoshop, video editing, Illustrator is a great one too. My biggest advice I would say is that, when you walk into Adobe, it's something like, you see all these potential softwares that you can download, and apps, or more apps, these days, not software, that's thrown away back. But, technically it is, but but you walk in, it's like you're going into it's like almost going to a toy store back in the day, or going to like a candy store being like, oh man, I want this and that and that. Dude, my advice to you, Alex, is, start with one and really kind of hone your skills. So Photoshop's a big one because everyone uses Photoshop. You use it for graphic design, you use it for, things that you're going to see on billboards. You can see it also on your phones. You can see it on the web. You can see it in print. So if I'm new to this, that's probably my first one I'd go to. Really dive into Photoshop. And the cool thing about, the Adobe products are you can have obviously kind of tutorials through it, number one. But number two is you can go on YouTube and you can Google, YouTube, hey, I want to search, how do you make a baseball card? Or, hey, how do you do a banner? Or, how do you do this type of, comic type of style and so forth? And so there's a load of additional content that's out there where you don't have to do those, manuals. Back in the day, you're putting together something and, you're shifting it all around, and it's about 60 steps, but now you can be like, hey, I can go watch this 10-minute video or a 5-minute video. Go watch my phone, watch my laptop, watch on a tablet, and then say, okay. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's great about that. If it comes to Premiere, hey, that's another opportunity too, to learn. But I think for Adobe, again, there's so much that's there. Illustrator's huge, Photoshop's big, Premiere obviously is important. And I would also say in regards to video editing, I still like using I use Premiere, but I'll use Final Cut Pro a lot. And so I think the biggest thing when it comes to video editing, I don't know if that's one of your questions, but it kind of, correlates with Adobe, is that definitely know them both. But, it's okay if you're really strong in, Final Cut or really strong in Premiere. Because depending on what you're doing, like if it's most likely if you're doing, say, like a social media coordinator role, for a professional team, which is really a good entry level role, if they're asking you to do something on a quick basis, that might be, hey, I just want this motion, maybe this, 10-second clip or something that we're going to use for Instagram story. If you can raise your hand and say, hey, I know how to do that, or know how to do the motion graphics or something like that too, that gives you a leg up and it's an advantage. So what I would do is start with one and then eventually branch off. And the other thing I would say too, Alex, is when you're looking, whether it's like for internships or for part-time jobs or full-time jobs as well, take a look at job descriptions, because a lot of times, like whether it's a social media coordinator, a marketing coordinator, a communication coordinator, when you see those listings, read some of the descriptions, because it might say, I want someone with, so this company might say, hey, I want someone with Final Cut, or I want someone that knows InDesign, so, make sure you know that stuff, and be, and it's, again, it's so easy to feel like, oh man, I gotta know the ABCs of Adobe. It's okay if you really specialize in Photoshop or specialize in Premiere, because that's going to say, hey, listen, you know what? I know some of these because, I've tested them a little bit, or done the 30-day trial sometimes, or the 15-day trials. But if you can do those and really specialize in, say, Photoshop or Premiere or InDesign or Illustrator, you're going to start being able to stand out from the crowd when it comes to jobs and, applications.
Perfect. So Premiere, what was the other video one?
Final Cut Pro.
Yeah, so Final Cut and Premiere. So like, is there like a big difference between those two? Are they similar, or is it like the same? Like, well, what differences are there?
I would say this: they're a lot more similar than Avid is. I would say. So, it's just honestly, Alex, like, for me, like, I've used Final Cut all my life. You start when I was, way back in middle school. My first real taste of video editing was iMovie. Which is kind of, again, a good way to start, like, experimenting, but there's so much that Final Cut can do, and so much the Premiere can do. In a way, there really is, it's just kind of your liking and so forth as well. But again, I think it's important to be able to know how to edit in Final Cut Pro, or how to edit in Premiere, because you might be in a situation where you're sitting down, you got to edit like a 30-second clip or a 15-second clip, or maybe perhaps even as a post-game interview, and they say, all we need is just a title card, or just, hey, can you do like a fade in or a wipe in with, a title card a certain way? And so you might say that's fine, and they hand you a laptop or hand you a computer and say, and you click on it and you realize, oh, it's Premiere, oh, it's Final Cut. So just make sure you're doing your homework, that you know both of them, but it's totally fine if you're better at one than the other.
Okay, so like, when you create your videos through Premiere or Final Cut, sorry, what are some of the things that you like add during it that, kind of make your videos stand out, or a little bit different to everyone else's?
Well, I think the thing is, like, when it comes to video, like, we'll use, like, say I'm at a game, for instance, right? So like, if you go to some of the Instagram reels that I've done for some of the football games, I've been fortunate to cover in this neck of the woods, I'm always thinking about when I'm shooting the video. First off, it's kind of, again, like a mindset of, you want to go in there with an idea of what is your goal for the game? Like, is there, is someone, 10 or, 15 yards away from breaking a school record? Is someone, the player to watch perhaps as well? And so thinking about kind of the angle you want to do, number one, when you're shooting the video, and then number two, be at the game, or if you're able to do it, or the event, and being able to get as much different angles. I think it's important when you go into post, you don't want just a strict, like, wide shot the entire time. If you can get some close-ups, so you can get a little bit of the, of the fans, or a little bit of, different angles as well, high and low, then I think that's going to help you when it comes post, because you don't want to come back and produce something for, say, Instagram Reels, where it's kind of, hey, it's like, Alex or I'm at the game, and you're just holding your camera or holding your phone, and you just watch the guy run by you. Like, you want a little bit of kind of a story too. And when you're putting together I've always thought about this too, from way back when I first was video editing with iMovie back in middle school, and like early, late elementary, middle school back in the day, when I first had a taste of Mac. The thing is, you always need to think about the story. So every video that you see on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, things that are being produced for the web as well, or even on your streaming, maybe perhaps, or watching on linear television, they all have stories. So you could take a commercial, you could take a highlight reel, you could take a feature video. They all have to have a story. So you need to be able to think, when you're editing or in advance of editing, hey, like, this is what I want to, focus on. This is what I want to capture on as well. If a team dominates, say it's a 50-0 game or a 45-7 game, show that team that, dominated and all that fast as the game. Like, if their running game for football was really good, show me like some really good running plays. Don't show me the standard, just like, he ran for 2 yards, and then he ran for another 2 yards too. If this guy, this individual is running, is doing some zigging and zagging or something like that too. Show me some touchdown celebrations. Show me maybe some fans' reactions. Show me the defense, making a stop. If you go back to one of the videos on Noontime Sports on Instagram, our handle is Noontime Nation. Is if you go to Noontime Nation, you look at it like the Endicott Western New England Instagram reels, you're going to see Endicott that won that game, but they dominated in all facets because they relied on the run game, but then also their defense shut down a really strong passing attack in Western New England. So I think at the end of the day is think about when you're going in, what is the idea that you're going in with an angle? Because it doesn't matter whether it's video, whether it's a written story, a podcast, always go in with an idea that, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to tell. And this is how it's going to look. Now, it might in your head say, well, I want this, this is how I want this to play out, which is great. But maybe, that's the way it looks at it. But then you come back, you look at the film, you look at the photos, and you say, you know what, I was going to go in with this particular angle, but you know what, from watching all the video clips, I want to do it this way. So, go in with an idea, but also be open to the fact that in post, when you're putting this all together, you might see something differently from watching it a second or third time.
Okay. So when you go to these games and, you kind of, maybe perfect your craft is not the right word to say, but keep working on your craft to that imaginary, kind of perfection line. Is this kind of where you meet the people you interview for your other part of your channel and podcast?
So it's a little bit of a mix. I think when you're going to, game coverage, probably most likely you're thinking, okay, I'm going in there, going to do a lot of video for both Instagram and Twitter, keep my fans updated on the big plays. And then, obviously, that, hey, like I'm going to probably come back and throw into Final Cut and throw into Premiere a bunch of video that I'm shooting, that's all being shot in 4K at 60 frames per second. If you're able to do that. Now, I'm fortunate enough because, I have, one of the more recent iPhones from a couple of years ago. So I'm able to do that. I think a lot of people might say from just talking quickly about video, there's nothing wrong if you want to invest, there's so many products that are out there that can help you. There's microphones you can get for your camera. There's, like I have right now, like one of these guys that was both like something, a stick that you can use for horizontal and vertical. You can also make it into a tripod right there. And so, if you're doing like, say, like an individual 60-second video or something, or maybe if I'm doing an Instagram live, hey, I don't have to, hold my phone up against a bunch of books. I can be able to do that and create the lighting for that as well. But when I'm going to those games, 9 times out of 10, okay, you're going to be interviewing a student athlete or a coach about the effort in the game, but that's for that particular story. I think when it comes to the podcast for hosting or for content that's being written or visually put together, I'm always trying to think, what does the audience want to hear? What does it want to do? I mean, one of the biggest things that I try to tell young content creators or ask folks in the content creation that have been doing it, for a while, I've really been doing it mostly for a decade, is you have to keep evolving, number one, but you have to learn. And you also have to listen too. Listening is such a it sounds again cliche here, Alex, but I think listening is so important because you need to listen to a variety of different, things that are being said or being, talked about as well, listen to both maybe some independent podcasters or independent YouTubers or TikTok creators, and then listen to folks that, are on Sports Illustrated, on ESPN, on NBC, because, just to name a few outlets, because you want to hear a little bit about what they do, how they do it, how they present themselves. But one of the biggest things that I've really emphasized, I think, during the pandemic, because, with having sports and certain games and teams in the area that I covered, well, that really then created a void because I said, okay, well, how do I create content for this period of time with not knowing when we're going to see a team locally back on the field? So what do? You say to yourself, hey, let's do this, which is let's focus on storytelling. Let's find out what people are doing. And the pandemic was a great way, just like how you did this with me, which is just networking through LinkedIn or networking through Twitter or Instagram, firing off messages. I know I mentioned this a little while ago on one of your questions, but I think that that's so important because everyone at the end of the day has a story. Now, some stories are going to sound bigger, are going to be bigger than others. Some might be, with a professional sports team. Some might be with a high school. Some might be with a youth sports league. Some might be with a nonprofit. So I think the biggest thing is thinking about, when it comes to who you're interviewing or what you want to do, think about what your audience wants to hear. If your audience is gung-ho about picks. Hey, I want to hear Alex give me his 5 picks for the weekend, whether it's an NFL, a college, or an NBA. Okay, well, then you need to think about, do I need a guest on, or can I do a solo, like, a Colin Coward, type of approach? So I think that when you're thinking about interviewing, or thinking about the story, kind of going back to what I said a few seconds ago about video, really kind of identify what are you trying to do and how do you want to do it? And again, I know I've kind of, said this a lot throughout this interview and chat with you, is that don't be afraid to try something. And if it fails, that's okay. But think about, if it fails, say you do a 10-minute podcast and you only get 5 listeners. Well, maybe that's 5 more than you would have gotten a week ago or something, or 2 more than you would have gotten a week ago too. Don't just ditch the plan. Keep trying it. I would do it for a month. I would do it for maybe a 6-week period. And maybe by that time you start seeing the number 5, evolve into 6 and then 7 and 8 and 9 and so forth. So, what I'm trying to get at, I think here, Alex, is that have a plan, think about what you want to tell that story. How do you want to tell it visually? How do you want it, quotes, and just think about kind of, telling stories, because I've always been a guy that loves stories since I was younger. And I think that that's what makes content creation fun, is being able to tell stories, and everyone has a story, as we both know.
Right. I've heard like 1,000 stories already into this program, and it's awesome. I think someone came into our class that got into sports with a biology degree, and I thought that was one of the funniest things. But hey, they made it, and it's awesome. So you talked a little bit about, I heard, visually for your interviews. What are things that you do for that? You talked about your different, like, editing for, like, your kind of, I guess, in the field, kind of watching all the games and stuff. You talked about that visually, but what do you do kind of visually for your interviews?
So right now, if I'm promoting a podcast interview, one of the biggest things that I'll do is I'll go through, not every podcast is always going to have a video element to it. Some might be, hey, listen, this is better suited for just audio purposes, and we'll share it and promote it through Instagram and do it that way with the link back to, say, Apple or Spotify or other platforms, number one. But number two, I think the biggest thing is thinking about, again, as I mentioned about the storytelling, is, I usually would cut up maybe 2 or 3 clips, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to hit them on different platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and be able to say, or LinkedIn as well, and be able to share it and tag them, number one. And then number two is thinking about what exactly, do I want this clip to be? So if I have a coach on, right, and they're coming off a big win, maybe I want to find out, and if I think the big win from reading the story or from watching the game was about the defense, right? Well, then let's cut up a cut, like a 90-second, 2-minute cut for both YouTube and social and so forth, and share that cut where, hey, we have coach so-and-so on, and his team's defense, held a team to, a season low in yards or season low in points, and, something like that. Or, I think one of the interesting storylines always is when, you get to that point of the season, doesn't matter what the sport is, if you want to talk about specifically from a, coaching or playing perspective, is I would say, hey, senior day is a big thing. Doesn't matter whether it's in high school or college. It's a day where you're honoring those student athletes, the men and women that have been playing for a couple of years. And, this is maybe perhaps their last home game. And so, you talk about that. I think when it comes to, say, like, you have a content creator on, or you have an author or someone that's a podcaster as well, just kind of trying to find an angle with them, saying, hey, what's something that was unique. You got to, I think, again, kind of like, as I mentioned, you want to scrub through all the video and try to be able to think about, what is it that you want to promote? One of the biggest things that I do is, so, if I'm either like in the car running errands or, starting my day, or if I'm done a podcast, I first have to listen to the actual show that I've, edited myself from the audio portion. And then when I'm listening, I'm either taking a mental note, or I have my notebook, which is always to my right or always with me, basically, and saying, okay, like, the question I asked about, how did you get into podcasting, or the question I asked about defense, or the question I asked, who are you listening to or reading and so forth. Because I think the other thing too is when I'm putting out these clips, my whole goal is not just also to tell the story, but maybe hypothetically to hopefully inspire someone that's listening to this and saying, I want to start a podcast, or I want to do this, or I want to, learn more about defenses, in football. And so, you never know who who's going to hear the clip. But I think in a day and age where visual is so key, it's a great way to be able to, go on platforms and not just have the link back to Apple or to Spotify or Anchor or wherever you're, running your podcast out of. Have maybe some visual, whether it's a 30-second clip, and you could say something like, Alex, I'm Alex and I'm joined by so-and-so here. And, on this particular show, we talk about a variety, content creation, and then also the inspiration for Matt's podcast. And then you have the clip about that. So I think that there's numerous ways that you can do it, but that's how I look at it.
Okay. Also, I kind of like onto the visuals part. I know on your podcast you do kind of like that gray kind of outline of each like Zoom call, and then you put the hashtag Noontime Sports on it, and then you put the person on there at the bottom left. How do you like? Is that all through that video software? I keep forgetting the name.
Yeah, so that's again post, Premiere,
yeah,
Final Cut. You're able to figure out the dimensions of, kind of lowering the screen in a way, because sometimes you want to have a little bit of moving background, and you want title cards. Sometimes, like, we had a student athlete come on a couple of weeks ago that was fortunate enough to, we got some photos to have, so when they're talking, it's good for like, B-roll footage too. Whether if you have some video, it's great. One of the things that I've been doing more this year is, interviewing, focusing more of the emphasis on this, empowering the student athletes for the interviews that you see a lot on social media, because, I think these student athletes are the ones that are telling the story. So I might start off by asking them, a question, but when I'm going through post, again, thinking about the story, like, if it's a 90-second interview or 90-second video you're producing, how do you have a student athlete from the questions that you've asked, taking away your voice, cutting that part out, and then being able to have them really tell a story. So if someone's watching that video and couldn't see the game, they can be able to watch that 90-second or 60-second clip and say, okay, the student athletes explained how they won the game and, what the difference was. But yeah, I think it's just important where, again, if you can do the video editing, it's great. But, I think content is content, you don't need to be the quote unquote Rolls Royce of, producing the greatest backgrounds and so forth is too. It's about the content is going to be the conversation that you're posting. So, if you can add a little bit to it, sprinkle through the editing process, that's great. But if you're only able to at the moment, hey, just put it out there like that. People are going to be understanding, because, they're going to care less. They're not going to care about the black background. They're going to say, well, who was on the show, or, what's this all about, and so forth as well. So again, kind of going back to what you said about Adobe, which is, start small and then, build it up over time. So, but yeah, the answer is, it's all through video editing. And there's also the cool thing, Alex, too, if you're doing video, in addition to what we're doing right now, I mean, I'm here on my laptop, presume you are as well. Our phones and our tablets these days have, apps that you can download and do videos, video editing there too. Yeah. So there's ample amount of ways to get some video editing, and it's just a matter of, how you want to design it and how you want it to look. And everyone's is going to look different at the end of the day.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. Just hearing that, like, you can post it kind of like right now as it is without, having to know it right away, and people be understanding. I've been kind of wondering about that. Like, are people really judging this already? And it was like, I doubt it, but like, I was just wondering. So I do have one last question for you. It has nothing to do with like what we were talking about. It has to do with COVID. And my last question is, how was the feeling of finally getting back out on the field?
Oh man, that's God, what a way to go out with a bang here, man. I'll tell you honestly, I mean, I think the COVID pandemic, I know it's still going on right now, COVID-19, there was a sense of it was a euphoric feeling to be back out there. It was the best, it was, I remember the first game I got to cover earlier this year, back on Labor Day weekend. It was a Division III college football game up here in the Northeast. It was Endicott College, St. Lawrence. And it was just a euphoric feeling. You know, first off, you're back in an environment that you're familiar with. You know, the first time you're back out there, you know, you know, they asked me, hey, you know, if you're gonna be in the field, you know, just because, like, you know, we'd like to have you wear a mask, which is, I respect it, and it's totally fine. But, you know, just to see familiar faces, and B, you know, see a field or see people that, you know, you haven't seen, that you might be communicating with via text or email, or, you know, via Twitter or whatnot over the last, you know, 18, 20 months. But it was a great feeling, you know, and to be on the sidelines and, you know, still thinking, oh, wait a minute, you know, 6 feet, and, you know, hey, like, you know, it's whatnot. But it just to be out there, and I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better day. The sun was shining, with 70 degrees. I think I came back with a suntan on my neck, and to do a good job of the sunscreen. But yeah, it was a great feeling, Alex, you know, to be back out there. And then a couple of days later, I went to my first high school game, you know, and it was just, you know, it was a euphoric feeling. I think that there's definitely, you know, for all of us, you know, whether it's a football game, whether it's an opportunity to go out to eat, whether it's, you know, going to your favorite, you know, coffee shop, you know, maybe just, you know, reuniting with friends, you know, somewhere, or family, you know, I think we're all having these moments right now where we're, you know, cherishing them probably a little bit more than we did previously, because here we were for a couple of months in a thing called the lockdown. I was thinking about this when I was running earlier today, and which hopefully, you know, knock on wood, we never have again. But it's, you know, I think that particular period of time has spurred, you know, the excitement level to be back out. And I still think that, you know, again, like, you know, I haven't been to a basketball game yet, you know, still, to me, football is still going on, but I think that it'll be the same feeling of watching basketball or watching hockey, or, you know, being out later, you know, the next spring, whether it's at a baseball or softball or lacrosse game, and just being there to do it. I think there's a sense of excitement for all of us. And so, you know, it was a lot of fun. And I still watch look at some of the photos and say to myself, man, that day really happened. I had to pinch myself and think to myself the next morning, my wife knew I was on a high going into it. And then, like, you know, I couldn't fall asleep, you know, right away that night, because I'm saying I was at this game, and I'm looking at my phone and rewatching some of the tweets and stuff. So it was a great feeling. It was great to be back at it. And, you know, excited for, I don't know what my next game is, but I'll be in another game hopefully soon. And, but it's been a lot of fun being at these games and being able to just, you know, shoot video and provide additional coverage for the student athletes, the coaches, and the programs in our, you know, backyard here in New England.
Matt, that's awesome to hear. I'm so glad we're all starting to get back out here, starting to get back to some type of normalcy. We're close, almost there.
Yeah, we're getting there, one day at a time, man. One day at a time.
All right, Matt. Thank you for coming. I will make sure to put all your podcasts and stuff into my YouTube channel. Got to help everyone out here. But yes, thank you for coming, and I'm glad we had this discussion. I learned so much. Thank you.
Anytime, my friend. Well, hey, thank you so much again for the opportunity, Alex. It's great to connect, and keep up the great work with what you're doing. As I said, when you sent me the link to the YouTube, I was hooked already. So real flattered that you reached out, and appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. This was a lot of fun. Anytime you want me to come back, let me know.
Will do. All right. Thank you for coming, and see ya.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Bye.